All right, so we had another great horseman, but our last episode of The Horsewoman's Voice, one of Heather's children actually hit it pretty hard when she said that we need something to fall back on. So we're going to go back. We're going to talk with Ryan, Mike, and a new guy on the scene. Well, he's not a new guy on the scene. He's been around for a while. He's second generation. We'll get to him later as our exclusive. But first, we've got Ryan back. Ryan, you there?
Yeah, I'm here. How are you, Eric?
I'm doing all right, man. So you've made the move. You're in Tennessee, as we were talking earlier. You want to kind of just update people with what you're up to, where you're at, and what you're doing?
Oh, yeah. Well, I've been in Tennessee and Nashville for 4 years now. After the 2017 Breeders' Crown, we went down here and took a little vacation and decided we loved it so much that we just moved on down here. So, me and my partner Kate, and we love it down here. So we bought a house, and when you buy a house, you're able to actually start doing things that you really don't think about when you have an apartment, like setting up a man cave / tool shop. And that's what I've been doing, and I've been able to start buying a bunch of tools and start my own woodworking and resin and countertops and all sorts of fun stuff on the side, just to kind of keep a separate line between my work and the horses, and then go out and get away from all the screens and media and all that fun stuff. I love it, but you have to take a break, I feel.
Yeah, and we're going to get into that. We're going to get more into Ryan and what he does in his free time and what have you. But again, we interviewed you in December, and we didn't really get personal with you. And, I really didn't know what you were doing down in Nashville, and now you're saying you got a house, you're settling in. What do you do aside from sitting behind the computer? I've got this shot here of this really cool garden that you built yourself.
Yeah, we had a very basic backyard, just fenced in with a basic 8x8 patio and grass. That's all that they gave us, and I didn't really like it, so I just decided I'm going to build a big pergola, a lot of flowers, a lot of gardening. I almost wanted like a Mr. Miyagi style kind of garden, but I don't really have the room. It's only 25 by 25, so I have to kind of work within that parameter. And it's coming along well, and it's taken months and months, but it's something that I really enjoy doing, and it's turning out pretty well.
So it's like a little gazebo, and we've got that table there. Do you go out there with your laptop sometimes when you're working and get out of the house a little bit, or you do primarily all your work in the house or remotely?
A little bit of everything. I love being outside. Tennessee, I mean, even in the winters, there's not much snow or cold, so I can go out there even in a sweatshirt and just be outside in the sunlight, and just do my. Even if I'm not physically working, I'm generally thinking about the next idea, and I'll pull from anything media-wise. Whether it's a logo or a special design or a TV show, I'm looking at styles and words and videos and all those things. I'm just always, my mind is going on trying to come up with the next idea on how to present our media to the industry.
Our next interview is going to be with Chris Tully, and I'm going to ask him point blank, what he thinks about what's going on in the industry, and let's see what he says about us. I mean, I know he's going to say something about what you're doing with media, but let's talk about when you were doing Trotcast, full time with what you're doing now presently. We've got a shot in a driver's backyard at his table. You were very, I guess, accessible to drivers. We've got a shot here with Trace.
Yeah, Trace has been great, and generally my relationship with drivers and trainers has been very well. I try not to be gotcha media like it was back in the 70s and 80s and 90s, where people were trying to get the thing to say. I don't really believe in that. I just believe in telling stories and getting a little personal with the guys, and just having them showcase that they're regular guys too, or gals, and just tell their story. And generally that's more interesting than, oh my God, he said that thing, which generally that doesn't work. Maybe you get one interview, but if I do the gotcha media and me and Trace are doing an interview and he says something I don't really try to get him to say negative things about anybody or anything, because it just doesn't work. And then the next time I ask for an interview, it just doesn't. He's going to say no because you screwed me last time, so why would I do that? So I like the way the media is going now, where it's just a lot of telling stories. I didn't like the debate aspect of it in the early 2000s, and still going on now. But I really do enjoy getting personal with a lot of the drivers and trainers.
So let's talk about Joe Putnam Sr. and their sire in Indiana last year at the Breeders' Crown with Rocking Nola. I mean, they're giving you access to their barns, like you just walk in like you're carte blanche. You could do anything you want, right?
Yeah, and I think that's because I generally want to just portray people in a positive light, and because of that, I think the first bunch of interviews that I did, people were a little nervous, or they didn't really know me because I wasn't a top trainer or driver or well-known person in the industry. I just kind of started asking people for interviews, and when I got some steam, yeah, it's like kind of, if I could pretty much interview anybody I want, and I try not to overexpose people either. So, I'm not going to interview the same person twice within a year or 6 months, unless it's super relative or relevant. But I try to spread it around, and yeah, I mean, I can generally just call up somebody and say, hey, let's go do an interview, and most people know who I am, so I think it's a general like, oh, okay, yeah, sure, let's go do it.
Well, I mean, that's part of the industry. It's like family, and, being multi-generational like yourself. I'm third, but you're, I think, fifth. We talked about this before, right?
Right, yeah.
I mean, it's dripping from your blood. It's like you're on an IV. So let's talk about like Luane and his wife and their newborn. I mean, you go out there to do this interview, and I mean, their whole entire family's there.
Yeah, it was cool. I think that was actually the first time, and it just so happened, it was the first time that they had brought their newborn baby to the barn. Obviously after you have a child, which something you and I will never experience, I guess it's pretty rough on on the mom. So I think that was the first time that Susan really was feeling up to being outside. And yeah, they brought the baby to the barn, and I mean, babies and horses go hand in hand pretty much easy. So all the horses love the baby, and I think that whole family is great, and hopefully that baby will be in the industry in the future. But again, same deal. Just called up Luane and said, hey, I want to do a Breeders' Crown interview, and was totally cool, and sat and talked with them for another hour afterwards. And, that's the cool thing. Even though I don't really put that out there, most of the time I end up spending time with the people afterwards and just talking, and it's pretty cool.
So let's jump into technology and what you're doing and the cutting edge things that you're doing and what have you. We have a couple shots here. The first one, I mean, this is pretty cool. You've got one of the older horses, and you're calling it, quote, the first horse view training. I mean,
yeah.
Describe this and what you're doing from a media standpoint.
Well, I feel like there's better ways to portray the races than what we're doing. Now, I understand most broadcasts from NFL to motorsports, they have the general camera views, and you do get disoriented when you are switching views, or you have a closer first horse, what I'm describing it, view. But that doesn't mean that those views aren't valuable. So I feel like racetracks have their standard camera from the top of the grandstand, which is great, and it's good, but we also need to show the awesome aspects of the sport, the speed that these horses are going, the closeness. You don't realize one of the reasons I stopped driving was because it was so close.
Exactly.
And I never really felt comfortable getting that close to other horses and other drivers. Exactly. When you're racing, because you're going so fast, the littlest mistake, and these drivers have such great reflexes, being able to be so close and so fast, that we got to show that, and that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to find ways to, and the technology's there, the software, the hardware with the cameras. I'm able to edit these videos and piece it together and throw these little pieces in to showcase, hey, this is really cool. Like, our sport is really cool, really fast, and needs to be shown that more, because you don't really get that from a top of the grandstand perspective.
So is it on the left shaft, if I can ask? Is it a GoPro? Like, what type of equipment are you using? And then, I guess, how are you fastening it? I'm assuming to the race bike.
Yeah, I've gone through all different styles. I put it on the horse's head, I put it on the horse's chest, I put it on the bikes, facing all different ways. So it's just a matter of trying. Sometimes I come up with great camera angles, and other times I don't. And I've had to throw away footage, and it is what it is. You try different stuff, and that one seems to work the best because I like the way that you can see the part of the horse's head, and you could still see a lot of the race as well.
So let's talk about Tall Dark Stranger on the gate. You know, you've got a camera here on the gate. You know, where'd you come up with this idea? And do you want to talk about that video that you produced? I mean, everybody's been talking about that video, where you're just going back and forth and all the different angles in a 2-minute race.
Yeah, same deal. Just trying different angles on the gate. And, you know, I had, and I still do, a lot of, some people don't like it, some people don't care, some people love it. And generally, I understand people are worried about attaching the camera to the gate for liability purposes, which, I mean, if we were all worried about liability, just nothing would ever get done. So sometimes you have to take a risk, and I do my job seriously and take it seriously, and I feel like I wouldn't put anybody in danger. So when I put a camera on the gate, know damn well that I tested it and made sure that things are as safe as possible, as safe as horse racing could be. Because, I mean, obviously anything can happen. A skunk could run across the track. We've seen that. A turtle, a bird, flat tires. Anything can happen, and, you know, you can't live your life based on the one minor exception that might screw up everything.
And we've got a shot here of Mr. NZ himself, Dexter Dunn, mate, coming out of the winner's circle after one of Amigo Volo's wins. You want to talk a bit about accessibility? I mean, it looks like there's nobody on the track besides the horse, Dex, and you. You want to talk about, like, not the liability issue, but accessibility and the freedom that you have when you go to these racetracks?
Yeah, that's another thing. Like, I think that, again, I take my job seriously, and because I am a horseman, I know what horses should be scared of, what horses shouldn't, what things I shouldn't do, and, you know, getting access to the racetrack is imperative, and I don't know if other photographers and videographers are trying to do it, but yeah, I just look at what's out there and says, well, you know, we got plenty of that stuff, and we don't have plenty of this stuff. And Amigo Volo's he's cool in two ways. He's not big, and I feel like a horse that's tiny like him needs to be maybe presented in a bigger light. So some artistic photography stuff is shoot him from low and make him look bigger. And that was something that I just kind of, look at this horse. And he's so perfectly well behaved that he just stands there and lets Dexter uncheck him. Like, whenever you watch him race this year, just watch him after he wins. He just stands there, and it's almost like he's taunting the other people. Like, he just stands there with his chest puffed out, and Dexter gets off the bike, unchecks him, and Amigo's just got his ears forward, and he's just like, hey, I won, do something about it. And
but let me just ask this. So everybody's in the winner's circle. It's in a limb race. You know, the driver's pulling the horse out. The trainer's there. Maybe some owners are there. Do you just kind of bounce out of the winner's circle, you know, from, I guess, that, what would you call it, that stage left side, and then grab those shots and then kind of drift back and kind of go back into the winner's circle and head back to where you are, you know, with your equipment? I mean, is it all split second when you're doing these things?
Generally, I kind of go like, okay, well, there's 7 people in the winner's circle taking photos, which is necessary, I guess, you know. But then I'm watching the horse walk away, and there's nobody. And it's like there's just this emptiness of just Dexter, just Amigo Volo, and there's plenty of other shots I've had like that too, where it's like, no, this is where we want. Exactly. This is where nobody is going to be. And with that specific thing, I just yelled at Dexter. I said, just keep walking the horse. You know, and I think the guys, and people in the industry, again, they kind of see me out there with the camera, and it's like, if I'm yelling at you to do something, most of the times they'll do it. You know what I mean? Like in the post-parade, I'll walk out in the middle of the track, same deal. And the judges all know. I mean, this is all prefaced with me talking to all the judges, and everybody knows where I am and what I'm doing. And it's like they know that I'm out there trying to make everything look better. So let me do my job.
Exactly.
And what you get is shots like Tall Dark Stranger, shots like Amigo Volo, where it just, you never see that photo, you never see those videos, and it looks much better than, you know, your standard. We need the standard stuff, but you got to have the extra stuff as like your, you know, the salt and pepper on the steak.
And that's the creative element that you bring. So let's get creative for a second. And I've asked you beforehand to send a shot of what you're doing as far as these countertops. And I have a brilliant idea. I have not told you this idea yet, but let's look at this shot here you have of this countertop. And if you could just be a little brief and explain what you're doing. It looks like it's wood, and you do some type of an effect on this countertop to make it look marble-ish?
Yeah, the cool thing with working with resin is you can retransform any piece of wood, and I'm talking about the scrap wood. The pieces of wood that you cut off and that nobody else uses, you throw them in a pile in your garage and nobody uses. Everybody can work with a nice piece of maple that's beautifully kiln dried and you know, easy to sand. But to work with the other stuff, again, kind of like with the horse racing stuff, give me the shots that nobody wants. Give me the areas that nobody wants to work in. Everybody wants to work by the finish line. I'll work at the 3/4 pole, you know, and the resin helps kind of just mask any pieces of wood that are not optimal, and you could put pieces together, and you know, you could have a lot of fun with it. So yeah, that was one thing.
I have an idea. You know, a lot of people like us, we take pictures for people. We had talked with some people about some of the top photographers, which is going to be our exclusive interview. Can you take, let's say, photos or background shots or headshots of people's horses and put them on countertops and seal them somehow so people can have, like, you know, a countertop that's like the countryside, or maybe like the turnout, or maybe a winter circle shot, or, you know what I mean? Can you incorporate what you're doing with the horses with the tabletops?
I've done that before.
There you go.
My neighbor made a piece of art that it's these little pieces of diamond that you stick together like a pixelated kind of thing. And I guess those are very sensitive to work with because it's glue and you're working with little pieces of diamonds and rocks and whatever. And I just resined over the top of it, and now it's perfectly sealed. So she doesn't have to worry about the painting falling apart. So you could do literally anything with resin, which is cool, and I think that's why it's becoming popular. So yeah, doing a painting, a countertop, I'm working on my shower right now with redoing the resin walls. So things like that, you could literally do anything with resin, and yeah, I mean, I couldn't see why painting over or glossing over one painting or a group of paintings or things like that, it's very possible.
So besides the media work, besides the creative element you're doing with these tabletops, you found a new hobby. Let's talk about bourbon real quick.
Well, I wouldn't say it's my hobby. It's sometimes when you have, when your wife has a hobby, that becomes your hobby, I guess. So her dad got into it, and he's got us, because we're in bourbon country, so he's got us running all over the place looking for all sorts of types of bourbon. And I don't really know if I'll ever get fully into it, but it is kind of fun when you're searching for, when he tells us to go find E.H. Taylor and we can't find it anywhere. Obviously, you can buy most of the stuff for stupidly overpriced. Like if I wanted to get a bottle of E.H. Taylor for $400, I could get it.
Wow.
But that's not really the fun of it. It's kind of, no, I want it regular priced. I want it when it's available. So we were searching for that bottle for about 6 months before we finally found it. And I actually had to, Moira had sent me something to do, and I was like, sorry, I'm bourbon hunting Yeah, I'll get to it later. And I don't think she was upset about it at all because it wasn't time sensitive, but I just had to put the job aside for a couple of hours to go find this bottle of bourbon.
So getting back to the media, and we've got a tail end with this interview. Once again, we could talk forever. You've got the shot here from the 1956 Hambletonian, and a lot of racing right now is studio racing due to COVID. A lot of restrictions are put on at the racetracks. Do you want to talk a little bit about some of the ideas that you have to bring people back out to the track? I mean, we know that the purses are supplemented by wagering, but like other sporting events, you pay that $8 pop and that $20 beer and that $15 hot dog. The concessions is where the racetrack owners make their money. They make on admissions and programs and all their expensive hats and T-shirts and even the pencils. What types of ideas do you have now, dealing with COVID, I guess, in the last year and, moving forward?
Well, I put that picture in there because when you watch that race, my favorite race, hands down, every year is the Prix d'Amérique, and that has 18 horses. And the 1956 Hambletonian and all Hambletonians before that and after that had a lot of horses. And it was total chaos / exciting to watch, because things didn't fall into place. And I think the NBA dealt with this a couple of years ago, and they made some changes. Same thing with the NFL. Everything was too good. We have too much stats. We have too much data to say what we should be doing and what we should be doing. And Yonkers is a good example of all the drivers there they know what they're supposed to do. The horses are consistent. The trainers are consistent. So nobody makes mistakes. And you get very boring racing because every horse is supposed to be where it's supposed to be. Yep. Meaning, like, if you got a favorite and he's good on the lead, he's probably going to make his way to the lead. And then if you got a horse that's fourth best and he's best from closing, he's probably going to be second over closing. And there's no mistakes made. And you have to make rules to alter that. Like the NFL dealt with the bubble screen for a while. And the NBA, people finally realized, hey, three-pointers are worth more, so let's shoot more. And you end up this movement of where sometimes the product isn't as exciting because the people on the field are the best that they've ever been. And you have to make rules and changes to make people make mistakes. And that's what the NBA did, that's what the NFL did, and they had a drop and now they're back up. And we haven't done that. We haven't made rules to try to force these drivers and trainers into uncomfortable positions, because that's the only way that it's going to be exciting. And one of the ways to do that is just have more horses out there. And I know that the argument is safety, but there's no stat that says that that's true. Sweden regularly has 12, 14, 16 horse fields, and there's no stat that says a 16 horse field is not as safe as an 8 horse field, meaning like there's more accidents, there's more this. Drivers just want to go off their gut, which is fine. They're the ones out there driving, but there's no statistical information to support their argument. So I think having large fields is imperative to our survival. But that's just me. I mean,
so talking about survival, I mean, I thought we were talking full fields as far as crowds. You're talking full fields as far as horses.
No, horses. I think that even watching it on TV, the Prix d'Amérique is very exciting because there's movement. There's things that are happening, and you're trying to absorb all this, and it's chaos. And it's fun. It's fun to watch. You're still looking at the main 2 or 3 horses, but there's all this other stuff going on, and very rarely do we get a race like Always Beat Mickey versus Wiggle It Jiggle It, where it's just 2 horses just battling it out for a quarter of a mile 8 times, and that transcends an industry. We don't have that often. Tall Dark Stranger did a fabulous job this year by just barely beating everybody, but you don't really get the races that are too exciting. unfortunately, because they just fall out wherever they are meant to be.
So we're looking for fuller fields, not only with the horses, but also in the stands. Is there anything you want to conclude with? We've done our shout-outs in the past, unless you want to give another shout-out to your super fan, your mom. Is there anybody in the industry that you see coming up since we've last talked, either media-wise or drivers or trainers? We had talked some stats about Jimmy Marone Jr. Do you want to talk about Jimmy real quick, or any other drivers and trainers that you're noticing?
Yeah, I think it's nice that, well, I'll find it interesting. The top three drivers over the last 3 years have been Andy McCarthy, Dexter Dunn, and Todd McCarthy. And it's interesting to me that they're used to racing on the outside, meaning they're okay down in New Zealand and Australia with racing first over, chilling out there, don't get nervous, keeping the horse alive, and that has transcended to the American racing as even better. And I think a lot of the American drivers and trainers kind of have to learn that it's okay to be first over or second over. It's, I think a lot of races are lost by trying to force their way to the lead. And I did I started another series on the Hambletonian and Breeders' Crown, and it's on the Hambletonian webpage about the 2016 Hambletonian and the whole breakdown of the road of the Hambletonian. And there's just a lot of decisions in there that I backed up with stats. It wasn't an opinion. It was flat out stats and facts for me to say that this was a bad decision. This was not a good decision. Here's why it was a bad decision. Here's why this was a great decision. And, I think the future's bright if we can get a lot of these foreign drivers and trainers over here to mix in with the Americans, and then the Americans can step up as well, because it'll only make the sport better.
Exactly. Well, we run out of time. We really appreciate your insight and just your whole aspect of the sport. You're doing things differently. Like I said before, you're just setting an example for the rest of the industry, and the bar is up there, and we're all looking up and saying, hey, we got to follow and we got to, go with Ryan's lead. You got the lead chain. We'd like to see what you're going to do in the future with technology and just the archiving that you're doing, and, see you out the track at the big events. But again, we really appreciate your time, Ryan.
Thank you, Eric.